pray with me? Heavenly Father, as we just take a deep breath in the presence of one another, with the assurance that we are in your presence, Lord, we thank you that you're with us. Lord, as we begin this slow and maybe a steady stride into the new year, Lord, we want to put before you those things that we bring in to worship. Lord, as we think of the joys and the heartaches that we've experienced from traveling, from being with family and friends and all of those things, so Lord, we ask that you would help us to enter into our opportunity here to study and to learn and to worship in a way that honors you and glorifies you. Lord, we pray that we might experience your grace and your kindness as we make this transition into this new year. Lord, we do thank you for those by whom we are surrounded, and we thank you for the opportunity to love and care for and impact one another for your kingdom. For it's in Christ's name we pray these things. Amen. Hey, before you have a seat, in the way that passes the fewest germs possible, please greet everybody around you and say, welcome back and Happy New Year. If you are a brand new student here, if this is your first chapel, your first day of class, would you please stand to your feet? I know there's a handful of people that are brand new. They're brand new. You know, when I was a student here, I transferred in, but I did not have the courage to transfer in or start a J-term. So for a few of you that I saw out there, welcome. If you saw some of those people standing that you know, please welcome them, make them. This can be a tricky place to get connected, and I think we can all remember those first few days. And for us to be gracious and welcoming to anybody that's new in our midst is really imperative for us. The second thing is, so that you know, there are 298 of your fellow students, in addition, plus faculty and staff sponsors that are traveling over J-term. Yeah, it's good. Some of you have been those people and you're back. Some of you aren't those people yet. We will pray for them. We will be jealous of them in some ways. But here in this room are the hardy, are the courageous that can take on J-term in Upland, Indiana, with a balmy high of 18 degrees today, okay? So it will be, yeah, that's right. So you winter lovers out there, this is a playground, okay? So those of you from northern Michigan or Wisconsin or Minnesota, give us your advice as we figure out how to navigate this cold weather, so yeah. Nathan, nice work. This is what we'll have a chance to do. So, hey, this morning, a few things. One thing, the 300 or so people that are traveling for J-term, Lighthouse, we'll be praying for Lighthouse as well as these trips that are traveling at the end of every chapel over J-term. So the Lighthouse co-directors or some people connected to Lighthouse will be up here on the platform. We'd welcome you to come up and pray for those trips, those ministry trips as they go out, praying for your friends, some of our professors and faculty and staff that are out as well. We'll be praying for them that it is a fruitful time. And we'll continue to pray here in our time as we learn the value of a J-term grind, what it means to really know and serve one another and in this space. And I am personally thankful for the residence halls on this campus. As a former hall director here, I loved J-term because there was a momentum that happened in the residence hall of this shared experience of J-term. Class schedules are similar, meal times are similar, and there's space to be together. And there, in building community and friendships, there's really no replacement for time spent together. And I'm thankful for a few weeks that we get that. I'm looking forward to seeing how the Lord is going to continue to work in you all in our time here. So I also have the privilege of introducing our speaker today. It's kind of a tradition here to have our former president, Jay Kesler, come up and welcome us back into the beginning of the new year, beginning of a new semester. Jay was the president of Youth for Christ before he came to be president of Taylor University in 1985 and served here for 15 years until 2000. Since then, he's been retired, but thankful for myself and many others still very present in this space. You'll see Jay out here in the campus center spending time with people of all ages. If you haven't met him, I'd encourage you to introduce yourself to him, but please join me in welcoming Dr. Jay Kesler.
Yeah. I love it. Well, I'm thinking about this year. I arrived here for you transfer students. I transferred in here in January. This, before they had a J term, there was pre-J or whatever, pre-J term. I transferred in second semester at just this time of year in 1955, which was, you may remember that. It was an interesting period of time. This year started for me and Janie, and we were graciously invited by the president to attend the board of directors dinner that kicks off the year. They get together, eat a lot of food, get energy to face you, and so on. And so at that particular dinner, the student body president and vice president, this has become the obligatory thing that every year they get up and greet the board and tell the board what the goal for the school year is going to be from the standpoint of student leaders. Now, I've listened to that now for, this will be the 34th year. And years ago when I was a student, I listened to it too, but they didn't listen as well as they do now. Anyway, they got up and laid out the goal for Taylor this year, and they took a passage from Ephesians 4, speaking the truth in love. And I probably something to do with the nature of the evening, whatever, but not totally. There was something about their presentation that was very, very special to me. And I went up afterward and I told them, probably there's never been a time in the history of the world, and you got to be careful about that kind of stuff because there's been a lot of world before us. But, using words like unprecedented or exponential, these are scary words, but I said it's interesting to hear you talk because the current climate in our country, the divisions and acrimony between people on the basis of race, economics, gender, nationalism, ethnicity, religion. There are walls and divisions between people that are very pronounced. There are other periods in history that are the same. And I have been impressed listening to presentations from this chapel platform all year where we as a Taylor student body at a Christian liberal arts university are trying to enter into education in the midst of that kind of climate. And I mentioned to John Kavanaugh that probably there's never been a period in history that so matches the period of time of the New Testament like this particular era. It was in the midst of the Greco-Roman world. Now keep in mind, this is the world of Socrates, of Plato, of Aristotle, and Nero. Fairly complex world. And into that world, the Apostle Paul made this statement. For the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, the intelligence of the intelligent I will frustrate. Where is the wise man? Where is the scholar? Where is the philosopher of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of God, the world through its wisdom did not know him, God was pleased through the foolishness of what was preached to save those who believe. Jews demand miraculous signs, Greeks look for wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews, foolishness to Gentiles, but to those whom God has called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than man's wisdom, and the weakness of God is stronger than man's strength. Now keep in mind, the Apostle Paul is making a truth claim based on John 1, that Jesus Christ, the babe of Bethlehem, is the co-creator of the universe, was present at the beginning, and was a co-creator of the whole business. Now that is a very great stretch to go from that 22-inch Jewish baby in a manger to the creation of the universe, but we have decided at Taylor Christian College that we believe that, and that Jesus Christ is actually God's Son. So it would be obvious that we would want to be something like him. John Kavanaugh preached a profound message, I thought, on the lordship of Christ out of Philippians 2. We call this the kenosis passage. This is when Jesus emptied himself of himself and gave himself over to God, that he and God were the same. And the Phillips translation, it says, it's done almost better, but let me just, from the King James, say, though he was God, he did not cling to his prerogatives as God's equal, but became a man. And being a man, he became a servant. And being a servant, he became obedient. And in being obedient, he went to the cross. Wherefore, God hath highly exalted him, that he became a name above every name, that at his name every knee should bow and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. John made the point of the supremacy of Christ and the task that we have as young Christian students to emulate the humility of Jesus Christ as described in this kenosis passage. I have asked that we put on the screen this particular phrase. We who are in Christian higher education trace back through the history of education, and this man, Hugh of St. Victor, who lived back in the 12th century, began the idea of the Christian Liberal Arts College. He got his ideas from St. Augustine, or if you're Catholic, Augustine. If you visit Florida, you want to go to St. Augustine rather than St. Augustine, because you won't be able to find it. But anyway, Augustine actually is credited by many people, and you can chase this wherever you wish, but he's credited with the phrase, all truth is God's truth. And I'm not sure that you can stop at Augustine, actually. I think you can maybe go a little further to find that word. But for our purposes, let's simply say that Hugh of St. Victor was convinced that God was revealing himself to the world even through the pagan religions. If you are a student of C.S. Lewis, you understand that this is one of Lewis's main points. Lewis was at first a student of Norse mythology and the Germanic gods and so on. And C.S. Lewis believed that all of these ideas of comparative religions were attempts that God was making to try to speak to humanity, and humanity got some of it right and much of it wrong, but all of the energy to reveal truth was from God himself, and then God, in the fullness of time, sent his son Jesus, the Son of God, to the earth, and he said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. So Jesus then becomes the example of the approach of Christian higher education, which is an approach of humility. Now, in the current Taylor magazine, whether you get it, I get it as an alum, and they have a little thing there encourage me to give my money to Taylor, and it's an excellent publication. But in it are 4 marvelous essays this time, one by Dr. Mosier, our provost, talking about the purpose of liberal arts. And then Professor Tracy Manning talks about her approach through theater. And then Professor Hernandez, who's an accountant, talks about this and has some marvelous quotes. And then Tricia Stan, Dr. Tricia Stan, who's a chemist, talks about the liberal arts in her field. This morning, I thought it would be of some value that you would have in front of your eyes what I consider to be about as profound and beautiful statement of what we believe about study at a place like Taylor, when even the greatest of our secular institutions have quit doing education and have built walls between people to where you can't even disagree with people without them shouting you down or doing something ugly. And it's people from all spectrums are doing this. But we at Taylor approach it a different way. And I take these 3 statements from Hugh to help us to think about it. First of all, and you can read it, that we hold no knowledge and writing in contempt. I mentioned transferring to Taylor in January of 1955. I had been at a state university, and there the classes were large and they taught. And we didn't write. We were told to have a sharp number 2 pencil. A pencil is a thing of wood with it got lead inside. You sharpen it with a pencil sharpener. And you would, most of your tests, almost all of them were true and false, or most true and false, some where you choose between statements and so on. And you were supposed to use a sharp pencil because they took what you wrote and it was on an IBM card, International Business Machines they're called. And these cards were put on a stack. And if there's 300 of you in the freshman class, your tests are all there, and they grade your things. And you learn eventually how to win on a true and false test. First of all, mark the ones you understand. Then take all the ones that say always or never, or have some declarative statement, put those false, mark all the rest true, and you'll get about a 90. That's the way it's done. Multiple choice, you get hints, and so you put that. So I arrive at Taylor. My first class I arrived in was second semester English. They transferred in my first semester from the state school, and so I started in the second semester. The teacher was a woman named Florence Hilbish. She looked to me to be about 75, although 75-year-old women look younger to me now than they used to. And anyway, I thought, what can an old lady teach me about anything? Because I was sort of with it. I had been elected Fraternity Man of the Year. I was president of my freshman class, and I was those days a BMOC, big man on campus. And I came here, and I'm in this class. She welcomed me, and she said, I'd like for the class to discuss, can we discuss the relationship between Nietzsche, Wagner, Hitler, the Second World War, and let's discuss Thus Spake Zarathustra. I thought, have I arrived on the moon? I knew there was an Adolf Hitler because I was a boy during the war. I remember the war very well. But and Wagner, I knew there was somebody called that, but I'd never heard of Nietzsche. No idea. Zarathustra, who is this? And suddenly I realized I was at a different kind of an institution. I'd come because I was a Christian. I wanted to go to Christian school. But we discussed things that came from other sources. Two basic subjects, that class for one, others, but literature for one thing. We read in the literature classes people like Ibsen, Tennessee Williams, George Bernard Shaw, Arthur Miller, Tolstoy, Turgenev, Gorky. We had theater at Taylor. The only Christian college in America at that time that had a theater department. The man's name was Jim, who taught it. He transferred from Taylor to Wheaton and started the theater program at Wheaton. But Taylor then developed a theater program. And through the leadership of Miss Greathouse and then Ollie Hubbard and now Tracy Manning, I sit and I watch plays that sometimes are a struggle, The Crucible, Scarlet Letter, different ones, and they're sort of anti-Christian in a way. But then afterward we discuss them and think about it. Why did that person think the way he thought or she thought? And we realized that to be truly educated, you should come in contact with people like Shaw, read Androcles and the Lion, or, I don't know, many things, and say, why do you read them as a Christian? Why? Because they're out there in the world, and people are talking about it all the time. What they aren't talking about is Jesus Christ, and you are. But in order to talk to them, it's better to come in contact with these things in a friendly atmosphere with a faculty who's read these things. Higher critics, for instance. I heard about the higher critics and the form critics and all. Taylor, we didn't read about them. We read them. I read the primary sources. They put the book on a reserve shelf, and you'd have to go to the library and read. You didn't have to wonder what Tillich thought. We didn't have to wonder about Sartre or Beckett or whatever. We talked about them at Taylor, that we hold no knowledge and writing in contempt. We want to search the truth in wherever it's found. That we blush to learn from no man. The other Christians I knew who were in Christian colleges in America at that time weren't at Taylor. In their classes, they didn't read what we read. They didn't read H.G. Wells and Aldous Huxley and Mary Shelley and Hawthorne and Nietzsche and Machiavelli and Voltaire and Thomas Jefferson and Henry David Thoreau and Walt Whitman and George Washington Carver and Booker T. Washington and Frederick Douglass and W.B. Du Bois and Lincoln and the Douglass. And we read all the debates. We read John Brown. And we struggled with these issues straightforward because this is our Father's world. And we're at Taylor University. And as our brother Hugh, older Christian than us, said that for the student, there are these important things: to approach learning with a sense of humility. First, that we hold no knowledge and writing in contempt. Secondly, that we blush to learn from no man. And we were exposed to all of them. I remember being in literature class. There's a place here called Caruth Hall. It's a recital hall. She wasn't Caruth at that time. Her name was Hazel Butts. She scared the life out of me. I mean, she was one scary teacher. And we read stuff that I thought, she's a Taylor teacher, and we're reading these blue patches. All the other Christian colleges, they were saying you can read, but leave these phrases out. We didn't leave them out of Taylor. It was copyrighted. We didn't violate the copyright. We did the play like they wrote it and dealt with it like it was. Some of it hurt us. It hurt like mad to read certain things about your Jesus. but we had to face it ahead of time and so on. And Hazel Carruth, I remember her talking about naturalism. Potatoes, well, realism was, for her, potatoes, if you read about it. Naturalism was potatoes with the dirt on them. And if the book has potatoes with the dirt on them, you read the potatoes with the dirt on them. And you try to figure, does this author tell us about the exceeding sinfulness of sin? Do we end up glamorizing sin by the time we finish this, or do we find out in the long term, God's truth wins out? And what we discovered was you enter into the world of inquiry, and you can't be lazy. You go into the woods and you start studying and listening to all the great minds of history, and some of them confound you. Many students stop in the middle of the woods and say, I give up on Christianity. They go home for Thanksgiving and say to their mom and dad, I can't buy this Christian stuff anymore. Well, for those people, I would say, don't be so lazy. Read, learn, primary sources. You will find people in the history of the world who will lead you out of the woods. Sometimes you listen to me and you think I think that maybe C.S. Lewis is the fifth person in the Trinity. Well, not really. But one thing I like about Lewis, but Lewis learned from George MacDonald, and both of them learned from Williams, and they were copied by G.K. Chesterton. And there were people like Hilaire Belloc, and there were people like lots of people who can help you out of the woods if you're not lazy. Third, that we never become arrogant and elite or smug. The third of his statements have to do with town gown, getting educated and learning to use big words, hippopotamus, watermelon, cantaloupe, big words. I've found that the greatest people in history never used a big word when they used a small one. But there are times when you cannot speak without the big word. Every field has a nomenclature, and the nomenclature is developed in order to be precise. Physicists talk like physicists. English majors talk like English majors. Botanists talk like botanists. You've got to learn funny things. Got to learn life processes, ingestion, digestion, absorption, assimilation, respiration, excretion, secretion, motion, sensitivity, reproduction. You got to learn about stuff. Object in motion tend to stay in motion. You bounce off the wall, the angle of, well, there's an angle of repose, by the way. And you read about the angle of repose, and you read about Leadville. You learn something about American history. You learn things. You read about the American frontier. You read The Last of the Mohicans. Why are these the last of the Mohicans? Why are they wandering around with this blonde girl falling in love in the trees? What are they doing? There's no America yet. They're Englishmen. They're going up the river. They're scared to death of the Huron, the Mohawk. These tribal people are killing each other by the thousands. The last of the Mohicans, they're on the American side because they're protecting them from the Huron. You read about the voyagers going up the St. Lawrence. And if you're in Indiana, you can learn about Frances Slocum, little American girl, little white girl. She was captured by Indians because the pioneers had killed their family. And they took her to take the place of the girl that had been killed. They took her little brother with him. He was a whiner. They tied him to a tree and left him. But they took Frances. She traveled from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, to over right near Peru, Indiana. By this time, she'd become 65 years old. She'd been married twice. Two of her boys had become Christians and were Baptist preachers. She was finally found by her family. They gave her a square mile of Indiana, Frances Slocum. She wouldn't go back to the white. She stayed Indian. She had developed a red heart. And then if you live in this county, you go down the Mississinewa, and you realize at one time Tecumseh said he'd stomp on the ground. and the world would shake. Son of a gun, he did, and the Mississippi reversed its course for 2 weeks. He had discovered the St. Madras Fault. The bells on the churches rang in Boston. Madras Fault is still there. St. Louis people need to understand about it. That's why they have trouble buying some insurance. You learn things. Never become arrogant or elite or holier than thou. Usually, I was born in Wisconsin, in northern Wisconsin. I was up in the sticks, up 30 miles above Hayward. I was born in a log cabin, me and Abe, in 1935, but my folks brought me to Indiana before I could fight back. So I have been a Hoosier all my life, and I love it. When I got to be 50 years old and had a little life experience, Taylor asked me to come here and serve. People in Chicago thought I had lost my mind. He's committed intellectual Harry Carey. He's going down there to Indiana, that flyover place. Doesn't work in Peoria. I had seen, that time we were working Youth for Christ in 80-some countries. I had been to 55, and I didn't find anything very solid. The whole thing felt like a movie set. But I remembered Indiana, and I thought, when I get old, I'd like to come back to Taylor University, and I didn't know I'd ever be president. I thought I may be chaplain, or maybe they would hire me to raise money, but I got hired as president. And I wanted every student in the world to get what I got at Taylor. I got that idea that we hold no knowledge and writing in contempt, that we blush to learn from no man, and that we never become arrogant and elite and smug and whatever, look down on people. And so I tried to make Taylor a warm place for students during my time. And it used to be every time about Thanksgiving, they'd let me say something. So I always decided to tell them what I like about Indiana. When the frost is on the pumpkin, the father's in the shock, and you hear the kayak and gobble of the strutting turkey cock. There's a clacking of the guineas. There's a clucking of the hens. And the rooster's hallelujah as he tiptoes on the fence. Now then's the times the feller's feeling at his best. The morning sun to greet him after a night of peaceful rest, and you leave the house bareheaded, go out and feed the stock when the frost is on the pumpkin and the fodder's in the shock. They don't know how to tell it, but if such a thing could be, as angels needing boarding, and they came around to me, I'd try to accommodate them, the whole enduring flock, when the frost is on the pumpkin and the fodder's in the shock. And I'm going to tell you kids from the coast, the kids from the big cities, don't look down on the little people in Indiana. There's a lot to learn. A Christian liberal arts college is a place where you rub shoulders with all kinds of people. At State University, everybody there was from Indiana. I came here and there are kids from everywhere, all different colors, came from Africa, Asia, Australia, Wyoming, Maine. Can you imagine? People live there. And they came to Taylor, and they all taught us something. And my prayer is the prayer that the student body leaders had, because it's going to be tough. But we've got to hear both sides. You can't slice bread so thin there aren't two sides. Of course, the other person has a point of view. I remember that when I read Truman Capote, and he wrote about two young people who went across Kansas killing farmer people and doing horrid things to them. He wrote a book called In Cold Blood. By the time you finish reading Truman Capote, you realize these people maybe needed to be understood a little bit as well as electrocuted. They needed that too. But you learn the other side. Norman Mailer wrote the Executioner's Song. Well, in your day, you could read John Gresham, read The Chamber. And you'll find about that people going to the death chamber also can be converted, come to know Jesus. He can forgive their sins and change their life, and yet they need to be punished. If you really want to get deep into it, spend some time in Billy Budd. If you want to understand God and His law and why we can't just live in a world with no spine, why we can't live in a world with no boundaries and no rules, why we believe the Apostles' Creed, read Billy Budd and listen to him stand on the deck of the ship and talk to his captain just before they hang him for breaking the law of the British Navy. So there's lots of things to learn if you go to Taylor. And I would encourage you to don't let them tell you you can build a wall. Either a wall out of bricks or a wall out of ideas or a wall out of prejudice, a wall out of bias, a wall out of arrogance, a wall out of stubbornness, a wall out of your own pain. None of these walls, and I would if I had time, but I don't. You who care, go home, push a button, and get a hold of Robert Frost's poem called Mending Wall. Something there is that doesn't love a wall. And read the poem. I'm out of time. Lord, I thank you for this student body, and I thank you for this little postage stamp in the middle of Indiana. It seems almost beyond belief that this little place and a couple of its sister colleges, our flagship, Wheaton up there, and all of us are under tremendous pressure. And many are giving in to trying to create their own God. We interview people on the street and say, what do you think? And each of them invents a God for us. They tell us what they think. Never stops. Paul stood in the midst of it and claimed that Jesus Christ was God, very God. Now, we trust him because he did some kind of special things. He made lame people walk, blind people see, dead people rise again. Then he suffered. They beat him half to death. And they threw a spear through his side and dragged him down and buried him. But he rose again. And it's on the thin thread of that truth that we hang our lives in the Christian college. Bless this student body and help us the second semester to continue the process of learning. But Lord, help us to be humble. Help us to learn a little bit from Hugh. And may this spring semester be a time when we're patient, we listen to each other. The fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, and temperance. Against such, there's no law. Bless you.